Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
You can draw your metaphor from where you prefer, the railways or automobiles. So, if it's the railways, you can say the India-Canada relationship now is a train wreck. If you go the automobile route, then you can say that at this point it looks like the India-Canada relationship has been totaled. That's why this episode of Cut the Clutter also takes a slightly different flavor. This is, let me warn you, an opinionated episode of Cut the Clutter. So we will do the usual decluttering, but we'll also bring in quite a bit of opinion. So I'm stating that upfront to you. An important question is being asked this time. Why is the Indian response to the US on the Pannun issue so qualitatively different from what it is to Canada on Nijjar? The search for an answer could begin with asking why Canada's approach towards India has been so qualitatively different from America's. Both are the closest allies and both have similar issues based on common intelligence. In one case, an assassination was carried out. In the other case, the attempt failed or the plot failed. But the problem is the same for both. We need to explore this deeper, really declutter in a clinical manner. Note, for example, that this day after, as Canada and India pick the debris of their relationship that has taken 6 years wrecking, it started with that Trudeau visit that we'll talk about, something quite different is afoot between India and the US. In New Delhi, teams from the two sides are signing the deal for India's purchase of MQ-9B drones. The first time the US has sold these to a non-treaty ally. In Washington, at the same time, teams of intelligence and law enforcement professionals from the two sides are meeting to exchange notes on the progress of their mutual inquiries and respective inquiries on the failed attempt on Gurpatwant Singh Pannu's life. He's an American citizen. Actually, a dual American and Canadian citizen. The American and Indian sides have also kept their preferred publications on either side informed of the progress. You see some stories come out in Washington Post and New York Times. Some stories come out in the Hindustan Times on the Indian side. On the Indian side, now we also know that CC1, CC for co-conspirator, CC1 as in the charge sheet filed or the indictment filed in the New York court, in the Pannu case. We now know that CC1, the lower mid-level CRPF officer seconded to RAW, who's already been named, has been moved out, most likely dismissed from service and probably arrested. On the US side, the trial of Shekhar Gupta will begin soon for trying to secure a hired gun for his principals apparently in RAW. This is a case in which India has fully cooperated with the Americans. India has not said this never happened. They have not called these allegations preposterous, nor has India said that India is justified in attempting assassinations in a friendly country. In any case, no country, we are not endorsing any country carrying out assassinations in a friendly country. That said, India has also not taken either that argument or the argument they've taken with the Canadians that all allegations are preposterous. Canadians are sort of ordering India to cooperate. India obviously hasn't done so. They've just dismissed the allegations as nonsensical and preposterous. With the Americans, the picture is entirely different. Two immediate points arise and make our first important takeaway. One, that no side is abusing, cursing the other, ratcheting it up into a diplomatic dust-up. None is calling the other side either a thug, a state sponsor of terror, and either way claiming victimhood. And second, no politician, no top official has spoken out from any side, that is between India and the US. Search me. I can't even tell you the names of the members of this Indian delegation. Forget the American one. There are just some mostly anonymous police officers working for intelligence agencies or investigation agencies. This is being handled entirely between professionals from the two sides, India and the US, with clear instructions from their bosses to resolve the issue as calmly and fairly as possible to each other's satisfaction. That's the approach of enforcing accountability, punishing the guilty, while at the same time throwing a protective blanket around a very vital strategic relationship. That's how big, mature powers deal with their differences. In simpler terms, it is also called not throwing the baby with bathwater. In contrast, the Canadians have always kept it on a high political and emotional plane, with Justin Trudeau making outraged allegations. He's always looked angry. He made the first charge in his House of Commons. Canadian media tells us he panicked into making that statement because news leaked that Globe and Mail had scooped the story and was about to publish it. So he wanted to beat the Globe and Mail. The Americans, on the other hand, did the opposite. They let a newspaper, Washington Post in this case, break true story from their point of view. One G7 and Five Eyes ally wanted the headlines, a blaze of glory and political dividends for himself and his party by the garbage truckload, because he was throwing so much garbage at India and he thought all of that will bring political dividends to him. The other G7 and Five Eyes country, in fact the most powerful of them, pushed for justice and accountability as they sought it without ratcheting it up with naming and shaming at any political level. Third, for Trudeau's approach to be called a success, this needs to help him win the next election. Though it looks tough given the latest opinion poll numbers, about half for his party than his conservative rival Poilievre. Or the hope is that he gets enough in a hung parliament that Jagmeet Singh's NDP becomes the usual ally. Who knows, election can throw surprises, but this looks unlikely. In any case, just that calculation makes this move politically loaded, with his election months away. Again, see the Americans in contrast. 3 weeks before their presidential election, they could have easily put it off by a few weeks. They are a superpower because they can separate electoral and strategic interests and ride their bipartisan unanimity on enhancing the partnership with India. Fourth, it became more evident from his 2018 India visit, which was part holiday, part election campaign in fancy dress for Punjabi and Gujarati votes. Trudeau looked at India with a degree of indifference, if not contempt. It is possible. It is possible, in fact, quite likely from what we have been given to understand and what we read, that he started out with a serious liberal dislike of Narendra Modi. But adding to his invitees list, a man convicted of attempting to assassinate an Indian Sikh politician, in fact an ex-minister of Punjab, on a visit to Canada? You would need to be Trudeau's parent to be so gullible and forgiving as to dismiss that as an honest mistake or pure incompetence. This was playing to a gallery back home. And so what if it rubbed a finger in India's eye? India, that poor miserable country, millions of whose people are desperate to crack IELTS and migrate to my country and do menial jobs. In fact, Canada has been vacuum cleaning low-skilled, low-priced, low-wage Indian labor. It suits them in terms of their economy. It also suits Trudeau's party in terms of its vote banks because he's fattening his vote banks. The disrespect for India wasn't lost on anybody. Fifth, the most touching thing is the Canadians accusing Indian diplomats of playing games with the Sikh diaspora underworld in Canada. But did Indian diplomats build that underworld or brought India's most wanted gangsters there? If India is accused of fishing in a pond of Indian immigrant mafias in Canada, a question arises. Who dug the pond and invited the fish to it by fast-tracking visas and citizenship to wanted and notified Indian criminals and mafiosi, often on fake passports? Every democracy knows something about vote bank politics. Trudeau's has been cynical by any standards. Sixth, you could say that these are Canada's mafias to deal with and move on. But that's half the story. A lot of their mafia activities carried out in India from safe harbor in Canada. Goldie Brar, an associate of Lawrence Bishnoi, the famous Lawrence Bishnoi, fled to Canada in 2017. 5 years later in 2022, he was reported to be in the US, but his whereabouts are now not known, probably in Canada. He took responsibility for the assassination of superstar Punjabi singer Sidhu Moosewala in May 2022. Why? Because he was said to be close to the so-called Bambiha gang of Punjab. Davinder Bambiha, the rival of Lawrence Bishnoi gang, Davinder Bambiha was killed in a police encounter in September 2016, although his gang members think that somehow it was the Lawrence Bishnoi gang which helped the police put him away. And now it seems that Arsh Dalla, who is a member of the Khalistan Tiger Force and works with the Bambiha gang, is also based in Canada. Much of these gangs, extortion, hits, drugs and gun running is being carried out in India, again from safe harbor in Canada. In the separatist stuff, Pakistan becomes an accessory to, as many of the Canada-based radicals travel there often. In fact, I could have even said that if Goldie Brar is not in the US now, maybe he's in Canada, he could be in Pakistan as well. And finally, the most breathtaking, the Canadian assertion that Indian agencies are working through Lawrence Bishnoi, jailed in Sabarmati jail in Gujarat. Now, we just heard that his shooters assassinated a senior leader of the BJP-led coalition in Mumbai, Baba Siddiqui. He's like the new Charles Sobraj. You can blame or credit anything on him, and he might accept it too happily. That's why I have an idea that might solve both India and Canada's problems. Since Ottawa considers Bishnoi to be kingpin of it all, it should seek his extradition from India, and India should gift wrap and send him to Canada with a thank you note, good riddance. I know this sounds facetious, but that's how the Canadians have conjured up this plot, which accuses Indian diplomats of not just planning an assassination, but running a network, a criminal network, multiple mafias, multiple warring mafias, controlling those wars between mafias and intimidating a community of several lakh people.